Welcome back to ColorByFeliks, everyone. I hope you're doing great. In today's tutorial, we're going to learn how to paint these colorful, bright tulips. You'll learn how to blend acrylics more smoothly, paint detailed flower petals, and create your own custom colors. If you've ever felt stuck painting flowers that look flat or struggled to blend skies with acrylics, this tutorial will walk you through every step. Alright my friends, let's jump in and go over the materials needed for today. I'll be using a 14 by 18 gallery canvas. It already has gesso coat on it. All I did was add a glaze of water everywhere and let it naturally dry, and it just tightens the canvas. For brushes, I'll be using my M1 blending brushes, 2 of them, and then also a size smaller, an M2 blending brush. For the little parts, from my 4-piece brush set, I'm going to be using a number 8 and a number 4 brush right here. As always, I use these a lot. And then also we have a 1/2 inch flat brush inside and a 0 detail brush. For paint, I'm going to use my 24 set of acrylics, and I'll show you which colors from this set. Medium yellow, orange, crimson red, viridian, ultramarine blue, and lamb black. From my 5 set of acrylics, I'm going to use titanium white. We need a palette, and I'm going to use my palette paper here, and also a palette knife to mix your paint on, some paper towels, and a jar of water. And finally, if you have a hairdryer, go ahead and use that. It just speeds up the process of drying time. But if you want to wait, you can wait 20 to 30 minutes for it to naturally dry. Both work. You could use any size canvas or materials you have available. If your color is a little off, or if you don't have, like, let's say orange, you can mix that with yellow and red to create a similar color, right? But if you're interested in using what I'm using, check out colorbyfeliks.com for more details. And finally, if you're enjoying these full-length tutorials, the best way to support my channel is by joining my Patreon page. Because of my patrons, I'm able to create more of these full-length lessons for free for you. So that is one way to support this channel and to keep these lessons coming. Another way is by simply liking and sharing these videos to people that you think would enjoy these painting tutorials. Thank you to everyone who supported me over the years. I couldn't have done this without you. With that being said, let's jump in and go over the plan for this painting. So the first thing we're going to do is create a sky, because that's the furthest distance, right? I always say this, I like to start from the furthest distance and work up to whatever's closest to me. So for this painting, we're going to have the sky, like a sunset setting, some clouds, and then some maybe faraway trees, land a little bit here, and then we're going to have some colorful tulips far away, and then some closer ones up here. And then we're going to finalize the painting by adding highlights and details to our tulips, making them pop. Alright, let's go into mixing our sky colors. And we're going to cover about, always probably, it's going to go halfway, right? We always go a little lower, just in case we have some room to play. But our horizon line is going to be somewhere up here. So this is what I have. A thumb amount of white, a little bit of orange, and then a little more white here and crimson red, and then the same amount of white here, a little bit of crimson red and ultramarine blue, and then less white here and about the same amount of white, but maybe a little less ultramarine blue here. We want the sky to be lighter. We don't want it to be too dark, so that is why I added more white. So now let's mix from lightest to darkest, and if we need to add more, I will show you. Now I'm going to dab my palette knife in the water jar and then use paper towel to quickly clean it like this so that paint won't dry up. And these are the colors I have. I didn't need to add anything to them because I like the way it turned out. So like a light orange going into pink, and then like a violet, light violet color transitioning to the blue sky. So from lightest to darkest, we're going to start here, and we're going to pick up our water jar, right? And one of our M1 blending brushes, as always, and we're gonna dab it all the way in the water. This will be a quick process, and once you catch the technique, it's very easy and fast and fun. So Now I have a little bit of water there. I squeezed part of the water out, right? And I'm going to start with this orange. I'm going to pick up all the paint like this, right? And we're going to start, remember the middle of the canvas is somewhere here, the middle, right? We're going to start from the middle and work our way upwards. So the sunlight and the sunset's going to be more to the right. So I'm going to have it brightest area to be somewhere right here. So keep that in mind. And you see bubbles, that's good, but you see water dripping, that means I have too much water. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick up more paint. Pick up more paint and kind of blend it in as best as you can. Like this. Pick up more orange. And then I'm not going to dab my brush in the water because I still feel like I have a lot of, pretty good amount of water. I'm going to add the next color quickly. And it's okay if you mix them together. It's all going to be blended anyway. So I'm not pressing too hard, but I'm equally trying to spread the paint. That's why I'm swirling, because canvas has this texture, right? So when you swirl, all the paint goes inside these cracks, you know, in the canvas, and it covers it nicely when you go into blending. But you could see my next layer, I'm adding this pinkish color. And then finally, we're going to add the violet. I'm still not dabbing my brush in the water because I feel like I'm pretty good with water for now. So I'm quickly adding that on top, picking up this next color, right? And as I go up, I start to feel like it's not running smooth. So then I'm going to dab my brush lightly in the water and pick up my last final color, this blue, beautiful blue. And then we're just going to swirl and cover the rest of the canvas. Dabbing my brush in the water again. And you can move around whatever's easiest for you. Maybe you want to lay your canvas down flat, whatever works best. So there you go. That's good enough. So equally spread. Now we're going to put the brush down in the water and pick up our dry blending brush and start to blend from lightest to darkest. So gently swirl with a dry brush, just like this, and take away all the brush strokes. Gently pressing, don't press too hard, but move the paint around. You could see it covering the canvas nicely. Fills in all the cracks, covers all the canvas and the brush strokes. And we're going to add some clouds to the background, so keep that in mind. But you could see a beautiful blend. It takes away all the brush strokes, and we have a nice smooth transition from that orange color to the ultramarine blue sky. And there you go. So now I'm going to let it dry, and while that dries, I'm going to clean my blending brushes so they won't sit in the water too long. Okay, my background is dry. I cleaned my blending brushes and I got a new water jar. And now we can continue to the next part, which is adding some clouds. And while I mix colors, I'm going to put my number 8 and number 4 brushes in the water so that my brush could be soft. Okay, so I'm going to let that sit for a few minutes, and these are the colors I have added next. Straight out of the tube, we have medium yellow and a little bit of white. And then we have half a thumb amount of white here, a little more orange, and medium yellow. And then we have a half a thumb amount of white here, less orange, a little more scarlet or crimson red. And then less white here, crimson red, and ultramarine blue. I'll mix these, and if I need to add more, I'll show you. And here we have our colors. So like a darker orange you could see from our lighter sky. We're adding a little bit more color and making them a little darker for the clouds. right? We want to make them stand out. So orange, like a pinkish red orange, and then transition into a pink violet almost color, but more on the red side for the upper clouds. All right, so we're going to pick up our number 4 brush. I took it out of the water jar, tap it on the paper towel, so we won't have too much water, but it's nice and damp. And we're going to start with this orange. A little bit of this, and I do have a little bit of water in here, so it's going to run smooth on the canvas. And so now I'm going to start, remember our sunlight, remember this is the middle right here. I'm going to go a little higher, so a lot of this is going to be covered. So our horizon line is going to be somewhere, probably my guess. I'm going to make it higher because I want to focus more on the tulips. So I'll probably have it right there. So this is going to be our horizon line. So this is like the middle, and it's about like 2 inches up from the middle. Okay, somewhere there. All right, so with this orange, we're going to start to add a little bit of clouds. I'm going to add our far away clouds, kind of blend it with the background a bit. Leave some of the pink showing through, not too much, but some of it showing through like this, right? And there's going to be some trees here, so some of this is going to be covered. So I'm going to dab my brush in water, tap it on the paper towel, and pick up more of this orange. We're going to continue adding our first layers of our clouds. And we're going to fade it out. Okay, that's good enough. Let's continue adding the orange right here. Continue. And then as I go out, I'm going to try to use a little bit more white to make it a little less orange. Right in here, I want to create a fade. Okay, a little bit of that white, and as I go up here, it's going to go into a little bit more of the pink colors. So I'm going to dab my brush in water, and I'm going to actually use a little bit of, let's just use this one in white. I don't want it to be too strong yet because it's still on the bottom section right here. I want it to be lighter pink, so it's going to transition, start to become a little bit more darker on the sides. Okay, I'm going to quickly switch my brush to number 8 because I want this part to be a little bit covered more. So I'm going to use a little bit of white and this color. My number 8 with a little bit of water, right? Not too much. I'm going to dab my brush in tap it on the paper towel to take away some water. A little more white. Basically, I want more of a lighter color for this part. And I'm going to try to glaze it. Skip some areas because I do like that background blend. So a little more darker here. Okay, something like this. Okay, very small amount. You can barely see it. We don't want to add too much. Maybe a little bit more. Okay, that's good right there. Now I'm going to switch back to my number 4 because I want to continue adding some little clouds. So I'm going to dab it on the paper towel. You don't need to clean it out, the paint, all of it. I kind of swirl it like this, and then I just wipe it on the paper towel. So it's mostly clean, but does not have to be perfect. So let's continue, and I'm going to use a little bit of white. As we go up, maybe mix it with orange a bit, we're going to try to create a transition right here to more of a pink color. And we're going to raise it up like this. So a little bit more. Okay, dab it on the paper towel, or dab it in the water and then paper towel, use a little bit of orange to right here create a transition. Something like this. So now we can use this color by itself in here. I want to keep it at an angle. Maybe use a little bit of orange again. Okay, and then we're going to continue with just this color. And continue here. I'm going to create some little connections, separations. Not too much, but something like this, right? Some little ones here. Okay, I'm going to dab my brush lightly in the water, and like we did here, I'm going to add a little bit of white and this color, middle color. Kind of get a lighter color, a bit of a lighter color right here because it's closer to the sun, so it's faded in the background, far away. I want to create a little bit of a transition. You see, very small little touch of that pink makes a big difference. So continue on with this color, and we're gonna bring it, fade it out a little bit like this. Okay, and then we're gonna make it a little bit darker now. So continue using a little bit of white, but let's make it a shade darker because we're going to the sides here, and we're gonna connect it right in here again. Okay, a little bit more of this pink color with white. We're going to continue adding a few more lighter ones first. Okay, something like this. So a little more of the white and red. And I'm going to try to make this one a little bit more straight, not too. And then down my brush in water, tap it on the paper towel. I don't want to make it too like curvy here. Make it more straight on this side. Maybe add a little bit of this color in here with the orange. Okay, that's good right there. Let's continue. So now I'm gonna use a little bit of white. Let's use white in this color. Start to transition to this next color with white first. So maybe a little bit more of this color. And we're going to start to add a little bit of a darker cloud in here. Maybe mix it with this one. Like we did with the orange, we're slowly transitioning from one color to the next. And you can add as many clouds as you want. Okay, I'm gonna switch, actually I'll do a little bit more on this side, then we're gonna switch to our number 8. So the same thing, a little bit of white and this color. And then we're gonna start to create a transition here. So a little bit more of this color. Then dab it in the water a bit and use a little bit of this orange. Mix it with this color here. Okay, something like this. Now I'm gonna dab my put my number 4 brush down and then pick up my number 8 brush. And then let's start by adding the darkest color here, this dark color with water, a little bit of water. And we're gonna create this one, nice pink cloud right in here. I'm gonna glaze it. with water and create my shape first. And don't be afraid to do this part. I know you might feel like, oh no, I'm covering the background, you know, I put so much effort there, but that's how you make your painting look better. The more, you know, if you're not afraid to keep adding to it, you know, experimenting, and you can always correct and make things look really good. And these things, you could leave the sky as it is, right? But all these details, they really make your painting have a nice feeling to them, you know, and I want that. I want to add, you know, color and warmth and that feeling of, and also this is a tulip painting, so it's nice to have like a pinkish orange sky. It's kind of, it'll like balance. So these details are going to make my painting stand out. So let's use a little bit of this color now as we go down. And I'm going to create some separations. Covering the bigger areas, right? So a little bit more of the pink. And let's make this one a little darker. Okay, a quick first layer of our clouds. Okay, I'm going to make this a little longer here. Use a little bit of this orange and the pink. And I'm going to try to make it a little bit more bigger here on the side. Here, I'm going to wipe a little bit of this paint off because I do like my blue sky to be showing here a bit. So maybe let it fade out in there like this. Okay, something like this. All right, so I'm looking at this, and do I like my positionings of my clouds? I think for the first layer, it's good enough. Maybe add a little bit more in here. Okay, let's add a little bit of this orange inside this cloud, creating a little bit inside. We're creating some highlights. All right, so now we're gonna go back and start to make it even more smoother. Right now it looks rough. Now we're gonna go back and make it soft for the second layer of clouds using the same colors, right? We're gonna start with adding our sun now. So I'm gonna clean my number 4 brush, and this is a good time to start to add a little bit of details. So a little bit of white and yellow, and this is where you decide where you want your glow of the sun to be. So I'm gonna have it, so this is the middle of the canvas. I'm gonna go to the maybe 3 inches right here. I'm gonna have the glow of the sun be right in here. This is where it's gonna be the brightest. Right? So a little bit more white. And let's use medium yellow by itself with water, and we're gonna make it a little brighter around here, this cloud. Start to add brighter highlights. Okay, and then right underneath here as well. Create that yellow glow in our sun. Okay, and then it fades out, as you can see. Okay, I'm going to continue, maybe add a little bit of orange this time, a little bit to your brush, and you still have a little bit of yellow, but we want to add it right in here because it's still next to our sun, so we want to make it look a little bit more brighter in here, connecting to these clouds here. So right on the bottom you can see I'm adding that light highlight to my cloud, and it makes it look more cleaner and softer, right? Makes it more 3D look when you add highlights like this. So a little bit more. Let's go with yellow and orange. Very small amount. More water. Okay, more water and those colors. And we're gonna try to fade that color out in here. Very small amount. Okay, and here we're gonna add a little bit more orange and white. I don't want too much yellow now as I go up. Not too much, we don't want a lot of color, but we want to go over a little bit on the bottom side of these clouds. Okay, very small amount, not too much. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit more yellow to my brush and then go over this part right here with the yellow. I want my cloud here to stand out, be the brightest. And we're adding that nice glaze and then fading out. All right, and now we're going to continue. Let's add a little bit of white in this color again, and basically we're doing the same technique, going back and adding second layers to our clouds, right? For example, right here. So I'm going to add a little bit more of this color, and we're trying to make it look a little more softer. And when you add that second layer, it really makes it more cleaner, it takes away the brush strokes. Like right here, you see a bunch of brush strokes. When we go into adding the second layer, you'll see it's going to look even smoother. So with water and a little bit of those colors, and try your best to match it. And if it's a little darker, that's fine, you know. But we want to create a very smooth transition to the background sky. And the shape of your clouds, it does not have to look like mine. As long as it looks soft and clean, you're good to go. A little more. The pink. And I'm just glazing it gently. Okay, so that's what I'll do. I'll spend some time going over these clouds, and I'll show you once I'm done here. I'll show you what I get. I'm not going to add too much of the highlights, you know, just a little hint. But for example, right here as we go up, I'm going to add white, not yellow. I don't want it to be too, and then add this color and white. Okay, and in here I'm going to make it maybe a little more white. Make it a little lighter, like this. Actually, let's use a little bit of a orange and white. Let's actually use a little bit of orange, just because I'm working here and it doesn't, you can't really see it that well. And I don't want it to stand out too much. I want a little color. I want a little glow, but not too much, like this. Okay, that's much better. So I'm going to dab my brush in the water, tap it on the paper towel, and use more water in this light color that we've added. And we're just going to go over some of these clouds and add a little bit of that lighter highlight before going over and adding more of the dark. Okay, so maybe a little more white, and add some in here. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Like I said, I'm going to go over and create my highlights around this cloud. And then once I'm done, right, I want some of them to be soft, so I don't want to do this to everything. Just a little bit, a very small amount. And now I can add a little bit of more. Let's add this, maybe this color with white. I want to go over some of these and make them a little lighter, separate them so they won't look all flat, right? Create a little lighter highlight with a little bit of white and this orange color here, right? We're going to go over and start to add some separations in our clouds. Something like this. And now I'm going to quickly go to my number 8 brush and add another layer of this color. And this one I'm going to go over. Let's use a little bit of a darker color. and glaze it over. And you could see when you add that next layer, it becomes a little more cleaner. And as I go down, I can make it a little more. And in here, I'm going to clean my brush and try to fade it out by using a little bit of a lighter color. Maybe this light orange. Try to make it softer. Around the edges, right? All right, then finally, we're gonna add a little bit of this white and orange. Go back again. And dip my brush in water. Use more of this orange and try to go back and create some separations in my clouds. Like this with water. You could see now my cloud is starting to form. We're starting to create more details inside our cloud, which makes our painting look even more interesting. Okay, continue with this color and some water. We're just gonna go over some of these areas we've already added, right? This lighter color. And here I'm going to add that light orange around this cloud a bit. Okay, and some in here. All right, so basically I'm going to spend some time going back and forth, shaping my clouds, making them soft, adding my, details. For example, we can add a little bit of white. We can add some separation in here, like we did to this one, if you wanted to. Things like that. Okay, so I'm going to spend some time finalizing it and then I'll show you what I get. All right, I'll be done with the sky. You can see I added the fourth layer and made it look softer. And I also added a glaze of yellow right here to make it glow a little more. But once you're done with your sky and you're happy with it, we can continue to the next part, which is our faraway land, some trees, and a grass. So we're going to have it somewhere right here, small section right here, and then the rest will be all flowers. So these are the colors I have. A thumb amount of white, viridian, and then less white, more viridian, and then black. And then less white here, small amount, viridian, and more lamb black. So I decided to add a little bit of color. Because of the sun, I want to make it a little warm on my ground. So I added a little bit of orange on both of these. All right, and these are the colors I have. Something like this. And what I did here was I quickly measured where, so I know I said right here is going to be the horizon line, but I actually want to bring it up a little bit. I know I'm going to cover some of my clouds, but the reason why is I don't want it to be too low. I want more focus on this painting to be the flowers, and I want it to be a little higher. So the horizon line, I made it a little higher right here, and half of the middle of the canvas is somewhere here, so it's probably like 4 inches down. So right there, and I measured this, and then I measured in here, and I kind of marked the areas right here so it could be even, so my horizon line could be even here, okay? Just to give me an idea. And so I'm going to pick up my number 4 brush, and I'm going to start with the darkest color. This will be pretty simple and quick. We are going to add some trees and things like that, but let's start with this area, and I'm going to kind of eyeball it. There's going to be some trees and things far away. First, I'm going to quickly, so there's that mark, right? I'm going to quickly eyeball it. Okay, something like that. Somewhere I have a pretty straight horizon line. Now I'm going to add some trees. So I'm going to add a little bit of far away trees in here. Okay, and then as I get closer here, I'm going to have like some bigger trees. Create some separation. And with this dark color, we're going to quickly continue drawing our trees, making them a little bit taller each time we go this way. This is our first base. I'm going to skip some areas, like right here. I'm going to give a little separation. And then maybe this one is going to be more a rounder tree. So something like this. Okay, and we got the quick base down there. Maybe bring a little bit higher here. Okay. And do the same thing. We're going to continue. Adding some trees here. For example, I'm going to have one pretty tall. Maybe there's 2 trees. Okay, something like this. And maybe there's another one, a little smaller. Let's continue. Let's add a few little ones in here. And we're going to fade it out. Okay, something like this. Okay, I'm gonna dab my brush in water. And tap it on the paper towel. Let's use this color right here, and I have some of this darker color, but I'm gonna mix those together, and I'm gonna try to add that a little bit. Right in here on the bottom. Just add that glaze in here as well. Very light glaze. Continue on with this color. And we're gonna create a little blend here. Okay, and same thing on this side with this color. I'm going to add a little bit of transition. I'm going to add a little more darker color. Okay, so now we are going to switch our brush to number 8. We're going to use this color and quickly create, maybe it's a field. Add that first glaze, and there will be some flowers covering up some of this, so I'm not gonna worry about adding too much in the middle here. So I'm gonna continue with this color. I'm gonna bring it down, and I'll just bring it down up to here, and we're gonna cover it with flowers, like I said, but and then here, add a glaze of this color. And it's going to fade out. And then in the middle here, we're going to add that. Let's add the dark one first. So a little bit of this dark. And right in here, I'm going to add that little dark shadow. Use a little more of this. So I'm going to add another dark shadow in here. Something like this. And I'm going to switch my brush to number 4 and add a little bit of a darker color mixed together here. In here, I'm going to add a little more. Clean my brush, use this color again. Okay, so I'm going to let this layer dry. Actually, let's use a little more of this dark color, and I'm going to add a little bit of a separation right in here. Little fade. All right, we want to create like the land, you know, these are fields far away, and then the tulips are going to be right here in the middle covering this section. So now I'm going to add the next layer to my trees, and Before I do, I'm going to pick up my detail brush and quickly, with a detail brush and water, I'm going to go over some of these trees and make them a little, maybe not the far away ones. I like them as they are, but maybe the closer ones, I can add a little bit more detail to them. For example, here. Right? Some separations and things like that. And you don't want to overdo it. Just a few of those little ones. Like this. Okay. To make them look, I want this one a little bit more sharper in here. And in here, add a few, not too much. Right, with that dark color. I'm gonna go over. And then in here, we're gonna create a little bit more separation like this. Very small little details. Okay, so now I'm gonna clean my brush and I'm going to pick up my number 4 again and repeat the process with the dark color. And this time I'm going to gently dab and create another layer. Just to take away the brush strokes. Gently press, and we are making it more cleaner. Same thing here. Repeat the process just a little bit. Not too much in here. Okay, that's good enough right there. I'm going to clean my brush on the paper towel and then pick up this middle color and go over. Let's go over some of these gently, adding some highlights to our tree. Very small, you can barely see. Okay, very small amount. There you go. Maybe add a little bit more of this color, and let's add a little more highlights in here. Something like this. Okay, let's add some highlights on this tree as well. Very small amount. So our trees won't look flat. And this one. Very, very small amount. And then I'm gonna pick up my detail brush real quick, and what I'm gonna do here is use a little bit of this lightest color and kind of take away some of the areas I added, for example, right here. I'm gonna make this a little cleaner. So I'm gonna go over with the light color, take away the brush strokes and make it look a little bit more softer. So as I go in, I could use a little bit of a darker color. These are far away. Okay, that's good. All right, so next, let's add a little bit of this color again right here. I'm going to take away, maybe add a little bit of a darker color. Maybe there's a mountain far away, faded. Okay, that's good enough. All right, so I'm going to use a little bit of white straight out of the tube. Let's use white, and I want to clean this area up a little bit. Let's actually use some orange as well, white and orange. I don't want it to be super bright, so I'm going to use a little bit of white and orange, just a small amount, like this. And with this color, we're going to try to take a little bit of that sharpness of our brush strokes and create a little lighter highlight in our sky. Like I said, this part will probably be painted over with flowers and things like that, but in the meantime, why not? This is a good practice. Creating some highlights here. Let's create a little more orange highlights to our tree. Right there. Some in here, very small amount. And fade it out. And now to take away the brush strokes, we're going to add the second layer right here and repeat the process with this color. Let's start there, and then we're going to glaze it gently. Lightly dab my brush in the water. We could use a little bit of this lightest color and add it right here because that's where the sun is. So the field is going to be a little brighter right in here. Right? So a little bit more of this color. And we'll fade it out. Down my brush in the water, continue using this second color. Okay. use the lighter color a bit on this side. Okay, and maybe a little bit of a darker color. Same thing here, let's use a little bit of a darker color and repeat this process right here. So I'm going to switch my brush to number 8 and continue covering the bigger parts, bigger sections, gently with water. Okay, and it's okay if you go lower, it's going to be covered. With tulips, and then the darkest color again, let's just gently, maybe that's too strong, so I'm going to take more of this color, take away a little bit of that, clean my brush. And there you go. I want to create a nice smooth transition. All right, so for the fun part, now we're gonna work on tulips. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use this color, this dark color, and white for sketching out my tulips, the shape. And I'm gonna quickly draw it out, right? There's no right way, the size, maybe yours could be a little bigger than mine, and that's totally fine. Maybe less tulips you wanted to add to your painting. That's totally fine as well. Okay, so I'm gonna quickly draw out where I want my tulips to be, and then we'll go from there. So let's start with number 4 in this dark color here with water. And we're gonna start with the biggest tulip, which will have the most detail. I'm gonna have it off-centered, so this is the middle, right? This is the middle of my painting, roughly in here, okay? And so I'm gonna go to the left a bit. So I'm gonna have the bottom of my tulip be somewhere right in here, and it's just gonna go it's gonna be a pretty big one. This will be the and then there's some little, right, little inside, something like that. And then we're gonna have a little, I'm gonna have it kind of going down like this, continue with water, and we're gonna obviously detail it, make it more fluffy and more round and things like that. But we're just getting the idea. So we got our first tulip done, you know, and obviously maybe I'll make it a little smaller right here because I want to and then here there's going to be a tulip next to this one that's facing us, so it's going to go around, and it's a big one, so there will be like a little green leaf. This will be a tulip in here, and this is just to give us an idea, placements of our tulips. And then we're going to have a lot of little ones, so there's going to be a couple tulips here, maybe one kind of at an angle. And as you go further out, they get smaller, right? Maybe there's a tulip hiding behind this one. Okay, maybe there's some closed ones, for example, right here. Right, with water, dab my brush in the water. Some closed one, maybe this one's a little taller. Something like that. There's going to be a bunch of little ones over here. And I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to cover some of this, right? I'm going to go up a little bit like we did with the sky. But I'm just filling in the empty spaces first and kind of getting the idea down first. And there's no right way of the shape, like I said, of your tulips, as long as they look like tulips, you know, and as long as you keep that perspective, like these are closer, so these are going to be bigger, and as you go out further in, they're going to be smaller. And as long as you keep that in mind, you can add as many as you want. So in here, I'm going to start to add a bunch of tulips here. And then this is where the white comes in, because we're going to be going over some of our darker spots here. So a little more white. Maybe there's a tulip on the side here. Some tulips here. I'm going to make one tulip somewhere in the center. So this is where I'm going to go over the top here and make a tulip that's coming up a bit like this. And then there's going to be a lot of little tulips in here. And then some little ones. So a little bit more white. Go back to the darkest color. There's going to be some tulips in here, a bunch of little ones. You get the idea. Okay. Obviously there'll be some like, you know, grass and things. Anyway, So I got the sketch and the layout, and I'm going to spend some time kind of getting the positioning of them a little cleaner with my number 4 brush and trying to kind of shape it out a little bit more. And it's a lot of back and forth with this dark color, and I want to try to clean it up and get it a little more clear. And once I'm done, I'll show you what I get, okay? So you could see it's kind of rough, but you start to see tulips right here, some far away right here, and then as they get closer, you saw some bigger ones, and then the biggest ones right here, right? And you could place them wherever you want, but this is what I have quickly sketched out. The next step is to create first glaze of the darkest colors, the background, right? Because that's further away. These flowers are on top, right? So we're gonna create all the dark greens and things like that inside. And then after that, we'll work on adding the details to our faraway tulips here. Okay, so I have a thumb amount of white, a little bit of Viridian, and then less white here, half a thumb, and then more Viridian and medium yellow. And then we got Viridian, more lamb black, and a touch of medium yellow. As I was mixing, I decided to add more Viridian to this because it's too light. I want to make it a little bit more on the darker color. So add a little bit more there. And finally, so this is leaning towards the brighter green because we added medium yellow, but I want it to lean towards a little bit like a bluish green. So I added more Viridian on the side here, and I'm just going to take part of this white here, or light color, about this much, and mix it with this by itself. So basically, you'll see the two different colors. This is leaning towards more like a bluish green, and this is like a brighter green, right? So something like this, and you'll be good. And I think with these colors, we are going to be ready for our base. Here we have, I added a little more Viridian to this. I want it to be a little darker. So just letting you know here. So lightest, and then like a greenish color, light green, but still darker. This one's darker than this. And then this transitions to like a bluish green. And then a very dark green color. You can't see it on the camera, but this is leaning towards more of a green shade because we added Viridian and a little bit of medium yellow. With these three colors, we're going to start to add our background details. So with our number 4 brush, right, tap it on the paper towel. I had the brushes sit in the water jar for a few minutes, as always. Let's start with the darkest color. Let's start adding our darkest areas first. So with a darker color, we're going to pick up the paint, and we're just going to create where we think there'll be the darkest areas in our painting. So right here, I'm going to add about this much. And this is our first layer, so you'll see brush strokes and you'll kind of see canvas showing through. So we're going to go back and then we're going to add another layer later. But let's just work on adding our first layer of colors. So I'm just going to create areas where I think we'll have a darker shadow, for example here, and then there's going to be a nice green transition here, so I'm not going to cover that area, but I'm just filling in. So here, that's another tulip right here we added, right? So I'm going to kind of go up here. Okay. Continue, maybe there's like a little transition here. There's a tulip inside here. And then this is going to be another green leaf here. Okay, let's continue on this side. This area is going to be pretty dark in here. Okay, let's continue adding the dark color in here. And around this tulip right here, I'm going to add the darker shadows. Around this big tulip right here, we're adding darker shadows as well. So this is I think this is fun, the fun part. You're just filling in, coloring in. Reminds me of being a kid again. I remember I used to love coloring in with crayons and having fun, and that's what it feels like to me right here, now that I have the shapes, right? So there's going to be a little tulip in here. And then this area is going to be pretty dark as well. And then it's going to go up, and there will be another little tulip in here, and we'll fade it out. Add some darker ones inside here. And it's going to fade out to different colors, right? This is more of, so there's a tulip right in here. We're going to go over the top and the dark shadows. And then it gets a little bit lighter on this side. But I'm going to continue adding that dark color in here. this tulip here. All right, so the darkest color is filled in quickly. Now we're going to add the next color. I'm going to clean my brush quickly and tap it on the paper towel to clean the water out. And the next color, we're going to add this next darkest. It's Viridian. We're going to just glaze it quickly. Make some of these Let's start with the higher areas first, because I'm going to make these a little bit darker. So let's just go in here. And with that color, we're just going to quickly fill it in here. And then as I go down, I'm going to mix this color and this one together randomly, and then try to blend these together real quick to create a little bit of a transition. I don't want this, because this is the darker area, I don't want this to be too bright in here. Real quick. And I'm going to adjust a little bit in here. And quickly clean my brush and use that lighter green color. And we're going to add a little bit of brighter highlights, the lighter areas we missed with the brush. Quickly go over it with that lighter green. And cover the rest of the canvas. Here I'm going to make it a little bit darker, take away a little bit of these. Try to not make them stand out. These are, I want them to be faded in the back. It's almost like you can barely see. In here. All right, so this is our first layer. As you can see, it's rough, but we're starting to see a little bit of more of the picture. So I'm going to add a little bit of this Viridian red on the bottom here. There, to this, maybe add a little bit of a darker color. Okay, that's good enough for now. And there you go. We have our first layer down of our greens. And now we're going to let this dry and apply the second layer and making it a little sharper and cleaner. All right, I cleaned my brush, number 4, and I'm going to add a little bit of this lighter color, right, with water, a little bit of this color, and we're going to create some of them to be a little brighter. For example, I'm going to make one that is a little brighter in here, little highlight, and it fades out. And then another one I'm going to make right in here. Maybe there's a little tulip, bright tulip that is hiding. Okay, and start to add a little more color and highlights. Let's add some highlights right here. Make this a little brighter with the lightest color we have mixed. Very small amount, not too much. Okay, continue on with this color, lightest color. We're going to add a little bit of lighter details. Okay, let's add a little bit of that lighter details in here. I'm not going to add too much in here. I'm going to keep this a little darker. Okay, a little bit of highlights in here, just to create variety. Okay, that's good enough right there. Not too much. All right, so now I'm going to repeat the process, but add a second layer, like I said. That'll create and make it look a little softer and take away all the brush strokes you see here. Now that my paint is dry, I'm going to start with the darkest color and really make it even more solid with color. And this is where you can shape out your tulip. And you know, if you accidentally went too much on top, whenever we paint the flowers, you know, you can make them bigger easily. So don't worry about that. So I'm going to add that darkest color, and as I'm adding the darkest color, I'm going to also mix it and start to blend a little bit so that it could be a softer transition. Maybe there's some darker greens that are fading in, right? Inside that we barely see. Okay. Clean it up a little bit. So a little more of that darker color inside, and then you can use this Viridian, this darkest color, and kind of blend it out. Let's use a little bit of this color and black, or this darkest color again. You see how nice and solid that becomes? That's what we want. A little more Viridian. You know, maybe there's things, little highlights that you can barely see, right? Keep it dark on this side, but do add those little details. Right, something like this. A little more of this color. See how that works? Go back to the darkest color again and have fun with this. Go back and forth and create shapes naturally. Let it naturally happen to you, you know. You don't need to copy exactly what I have here. Let it all naturally happen. That's the best way. It's important to, when you paint, try to make a painting your own. You know, switch it up, and that's what makes the painting fun. But you could see that second layer works so much nicer. It's blending better, and we're creating more of a cleaner look to our painting here. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to spend some time filling in, going over, you know, and doing what I did right here, trying to make it a little more cleaner. And once I'm done with these two colors, right, the black and this one, playing with these, I'm going to go in and start to play with this and this color, right, the lighter color. See, for example, right here, right, I'm going to go in and gently kind of glaze it over like this. Add that lighter highlight. Right, maybe in here. Very gently. And there you go. Okay, so I'll spend some time working on these parts, and then I'll show you what I get once I'm done. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of black and medium yellow. I'm going to mix this real quick. It's going to be like a very dark green. And with this color, I'm going to glaze using my M2 blending brush the areas we just added all over the place. So with our M2 blending brush, dab it all the way in the water, squeeze the water out, right? So you have a little bit in here. And with this color and a little bit of water, we're going to glaze it all over. It's okay if you cover some of the tulips you added. Mainly in here, I want this area to be dark. So I'm going to glaze that color gently. Make this a little darker on the bottom mainly. I don't want them to stand out too much. And I'm going to let it fade out. I'm only mainly going to do it on the bottom here. Add that glaze of a darker tone. Maybe there's some parts where I missed covering the canvas, right? And this helps to cover the rest of the parts. So very nice transparent glaze with water. Okay, that's good enough. And the next step, make it a little darker in here. Okay, the next step, we're going to add a little bit of medium yellow and orange. I'm going to take part of this light green color, take part of it, mix it with this. Not too much orange, but just a little bit like this, right? Like a greenish orange color. And we're going to add a little glaze with our number 4 brush, gonna add some color, a little bit of brighter colors. For example, right here, I want this from the sunlight, I want this to kind of glow a little more, right? I don't want it to look flat. I want it to have a little more color like this. Okay. Let it fade out, and then a little bit in here as well. Small amount, let it fade out. And then we're gonna add the same color. We're gonna add to some of our areas in here. Some parts, not everywhere, just some parts that we think, for example, right here, I want to add a little bit of that. Maybe in here, very small amount, not too much. Start to add a little bit of warmth to some of these. Okay. That's good enough right there. And finally, for this part, I'm going to detail everything. So I'm going to take the part of this leftover color, mix it with some white. Maybe take all of it. I want it to still be bright, but not too bright. So I'm going to take as much as I can right here. Maybe take part of this color, why not? A little bit of this color. There you go. That's much better. And with this color, we are going to add some details with our detail brush. For example, I'm going to dab my brush in the water and swirl my brush like this. And with water and a little bit of paint, I'm going to add a few areas, not everywhere, mainly on these tulips here. I'm going to start to add a little brighter highlights and make it a little more sharper. And let it fade out, creating these lighter highlights, right? And fade out. Okay, and a little bit on this side. Going back and forth. That's good enough there. Let's make this a little brighter. All right, so same thing here. Going to add a little bit more highlights, brighter highlights, to make my tulip stand out a little bit more. And fade out. These are little details. Fun details, so take your time. And then in here as well, I want to add a little bit of that brighter highlight, make some of them stand out right in here. Get a little cleaner. and sharper. Let it fade out. So that's what I'll do. I'll spend some time kind of cleaning up a little bit, making them look and some of these we're probably going to go over because we're obviously going to be adding some tulips, you know, so I'll try carefully not to go over, but if I do, it's fine. I'll easily fix this, mix similar colors, right? And work your way by adding and blending until you're happy with how they look. So a little bit in here. Okay. So that's what I'll do. I'll add a little bit more highlights right here on as I go higher, right? I want it to be even brighter right here because of the light. So I'm gonna spend some time adding all these beautiful bright highlights. And a little bit in here. Maybe this one's like this tulip here, fading out. Okay, and once you're done with that, we can go to our dark color, this color right here, with water, and we can do that with a dark color. We can create a little bit of a dark shadow inside our tulip here to make it pop even more. Creating darker shadows, maybe a little bit on the bottom here like this. And same thing on this one. Okay. And some separations, details in here, right? Very small details around. This is the part where I'm just cleaning up and trying to make them, some of these a little cleaner and sharper. For example, right here, right? I want to make this a little sharper. And not everywhere, you know. I'm just choosing parts. For example, right here, I'll also make it sharper, right? So pick and choose wherever you think would look the best, having those darker shadows. All right, we can always come back to any parts, but let's continue. So I'm going to work on these tulips here, and you could totally add any colors, maybe orange or whatever color you think would look best here. I'm going to choose to have maybe a pinkish, like a violet pink color here to these tulips, and these are the colors I added. White straight out of the tube for highlights, less white, crimson red, and a touch of ultramarine blue, and then more crimson red here and ultramarine blue here by itself. And then for our darkest color, I added crimson red and lamp black here. Okay, so something like this. With these colors, we're gonna add our first tulips, start to add details, and I'm going to start with filling like we did with the darker areas and the light areas, my number 4 brush, and we're going to start to add the lightest color first. And we're going to do the opposite this time. And I'm going to kind of bring it down. Skip some areas. I'm not going to go too far down because we're going to transition to the darker colors. But very easy first step. Randomly add it. Glaze it like that with that lightest pink color. And it might look confusing for now, but you'll see once we start to add a little more details. It'll all come together. Okay, that's good. We'll end right there. And then we're also going to have some in here as well. So I'm going to add right here some pink ones. So go over and I'm going to bring some pink ones all the way out this way. Maybe you can barely see these. Something like this. Okay, next I'm going to clean my brush real quick. Tap it on the paper towel. Let's use the next color, this darkest color here. And we're going to really start to make it look even, make it stand out a little more. By the way, if you've ever wanted more personal feedback on your art, I created a mentorship community where I give art feedback, do quarterly live painting calls, and a whole library of over 15 of my most in-depth paintings that I have never shared on YouTube. So if you're looking to take your art to the next level with me as your mentor and get access to exclusive lessons with my most in-depth teaching, you can check it out at the link below in the description or go to learn.colorbyfeliks.com/mentorship. I'd love to see your work there and have you join our community. And continue. I'm going to add another one. They're all bunched up together so you don't maybe clearly see. But once we start to add more and more details, you'll start to notice them come together. Okay, and then a little bit in here on the bottom. And some in here. All right. Let's add a little bit of that pink inside here. Okay, and now I'm going to clean my brush and use the darkest color for the bottom parts. So use the darkest color here, and right here, I'm going to make it super dark. Okay, that's good enough. Now, I'm going to clean my brush completely and use a little bit of white, and this color, pink, mix those randomly together. Make it a light pink, even lighter. And with this and some water, I'm going to try to correct and start to shape a little bit my tulips. So a little more of this light pink. Make it a little cleaner, a little more of the pink. Randomly mix them. Adding the brighter highlights. I'm going to add a little more white in here. All right, so now we got the first base done. Actually, a little bit I forgot on this side. Little bright highlights here that you can barely see. Okay, something like this. All right, and now I'm going to clean my brush and repeat the process and make it even softer. So start with the lightest color, pink, this lightest pink color, and we're going to repeat the process and try to make it even more cleaner, glazing it with water and creating our tulips a little softer. And gently go over, try to make it soft. And repeat the process, doing the same thing with the next color and some water. We're going to glaze it. Make it even more cleaner. As you can see, it's becoming more soft. And that's what we want. We want a smooth transition to that light pink. Okay, so I'm going to quickly finish this, and then the last part will be detailing. And finally, with number 4 and the darkest color here, we have left. And if you're running low, just mix a little bit of medium yellow and more black, so it's going to be a darker color, right? We're going to, right here, try to create this dark shadow right underneath. Some of these here. And then of course we can go back with the green and fill in the areas we didn't, paint over. So it's a lot of back and forth, but and you can use a little bit of this color too. Dark color, why not? And finally, we're going to add some details. So I'm going to take a little bit of this pink and add white. And so that I won't have to go back and forth, I'm just going to make a lighter pink color for my highlights. Like this, something like this, okay? And as always, with a detail brush, we're going to go over with water. Swirl our brush, and I'm going to go over and make it even more cleaner and detailed. For example, right here, right? I'm going to make that brighter highlight in here, going in like this, and then fading out like we did to these ones right here, right? I'm going to make it look a little bit more detailed. These little highlights are important and will make our tulip look more realistic. Okay. And then, of course, in here. Something like this. I decided to add a little bit of pink. I'm gonna add a little bit of pink tulips on this side as well. Right here, just this kind of like what we did here. Right here as well. But for now, I'm gonna quickly add my highlights first, right? Create some separations. And for example, this tulip, I'm gonna make it go over like this. Okay, something like this. So I'm going to spend some time doing that to these, following where my highlights are already, and just adding that extra layer. And then once I'm done, I'll show you what I have here. And then these ones right here. Okay, so as you can see, it's looking a lot cleaner, right? So, and then you can also come back with your dark color and add some, for example, you could also add some inside, a little more color inside, right? Some separations if you wanted to, not much, but to make it even more cleaner. Maybe here we're going to add a lighter pink. Right? So there you go. Like I said, I'm going to work on adding a little bit in here, doing the same technique, going back and forth, starting with this pink color real quick before the paint dries. We're going to add the glaze right in here. Randomly, kind of like what we did here. Maybe they're hard to see. Fading in the back, and then this darkest color next. Gently glaze it, skip some areas like this. Okay, so I'm gonna finish this up and then we're gonna work on these flowers next. And what I added is white, a little bit of orange and white. I'm gonna take part of this pink so that I won't let it go to waste. Very small amount of pink. and mix it in randomly. It's okay if it's messy. Painting is messy, so something like this. Maybe take this light pink, mix it all, and it'll be like an orangey pink color. And so with these colors, we're gonna add a little bit more different color tulips. So first we're gonna start with this orange, right? This light pink orange. We're gonna go over some of these far away ones with a little bit of that orangey color. Maybe the light is hitting them and they're a little bit okay, very small amount. And now I'm gonna use light, let's use light pink. Let's use light pink. I'm gonna glaze it on top a little bit. That light pink. Quickly. Continue. All right, that's good. And finally, I'm going to clean my brush and use this color. Let's use this pink, dark pink color, mix it in with orange a little bit so that we can have a nice warmer transition right here. And on the bottom, we're going to add this color. Kind of like we did with these tulips, right? And I create a little bit of a pink inside. But there's still more leaning towards orange, warmer tone, right? Okay, so very easy, as you could see. Just randomly glazing it like this. And then now I'm gonna go back and with just the white, I'm gonna brighten up, make these very bright. So with a little bit of white, I'm going to go over and make these super bright. So because of the light, I'm gonna make them a little bit more bigger and brighter. And then we'll obviously go over with our detail brush and clean it up a little bit. Okay, add some white in here, highlights from the sunlight. Clean my brush, and to make it a little bit cleaner, I'm going to use a little bit of white and orange, mix those two, and then try to blend on the bottom a little bit, more orange, orangey pink. And then let's use some of this straight. And I want to make certain areas a little darker, maybe they're the shadows a little bit darker in here, not too much, just to make some of them stand out a little more. Okay, a little bit inside here, as you can see, starting to come together nicely. All right. And now I can go back with my detail brush and start to go over it with, I'm going to use just the white because I want these ones to be one of the brightest tulips on this side. So I'm going to go over and with water and start to kind of what I did here. Try to create some separations, making them look a little more detailed. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit in here as well. This is what I have so far. Let's continue with the next tulips. And these are the colors I added. A little bit of white, thumb amount, and then medium yellow. Less white here, more medium yellow and orange. Less white than this one, more orange, and then crimson red. And then crimson red by itself. And then a little bit of white and viridian by itself. So we're just going to mix these colors, this one, and this one. All right, like we did with the other tulips, we're going to use our number 4. And we're going to start with, let's start with the lightest color here. Okay, and we're going to outline, for example, right here, where the bright highlights will be. And then this tulip. I'm going to actually make this one stand out. So I'm going to go over this area and paint it over. Make it more circular. Okay, for now that's good. Let's go to the next color, orange. And we're going to start to add a little bit more color here. here. Okay, next we're gonna go to the next darkest color. Gently go over these areas here. Okay, I'm gonna clean my brush real quick and add the red. Right? And we're going to go over and this crimson red and add even more of a darker shadows. And we're going to add some darker ones in here. I'm going to use the light color right here and add a little bit of a lighter color. Okay, something like this. And we're going to add a little bit of that red in here to some of these. And then maybe add the lighter color. Let's add an orange. Let's add another color of orange right in here. And then a bit of a darker color. And then crimson red on the bottom. And then here I'm going to add a little bit of orange and this green that we've mixed. And we're just going to go over this area with the green. And it's going to fade out. I'm going to use the Viridian straight out of the tube and add it on the bottom here. Use a little bit of crimson red. Let's bring it in. Maybe this one's kind of curved, opens up a little bit here. And use that light Viridian color we've mixed, and I'm going to go inside here a little bit as well to some of these. Let's add the lightest color. Clean my brush completely. I'm going to add a little bit of green. Let's add a little bit of black straight out of the tube and medium yellow. We're going to add a little bit of green transition, and I'll show you. So a little bit of black, lamp black and medium yellow. We're going to use a little bit of this green and black Viridian and this green, and we're going to add a dark transition here to this tulip. And then as we go up, it's going to turn a little bit more green. Let's use a little bit of white so it won't be too intense. And add some separations here. Maybe you could see inside a little bit from this tulip. I'm going to clean my brush. Use this color and medium yellow. Let's make it a little brighter. So I'm going to use a little bit of medium yellow. Try to create a little bit more of a, I accidentally touched black. That's okay. Just with your wet brush, wipe it off, and then clean it on a paper towel, and then medium yellow again. Making this a little bit brighter. I want some of my tulips to be colorful. Maybe add a little bit in here, that yellow. And finally, I'm going to add a little bit of this light color here. Add it onto this tulip right in here. And then we're going to use this darkest red color here. Okay, so we got the first layer of our tulips here. They still look a little bit rough. And now, like we did with the other tulips, we're going to make it, add the second layer, repeating the similar, colors. Maybe let's add a little bit of white as well, just in case we need to brighten certain parts, like for example this side. I want to make some of these stand out a little bit more, so I'm going to use a little bit white and this red, make it light pink instead of yellow. Light pink, and then here I want to brighten some of these. Right, something like this. And in here, I want to brighten this one. Make it maybe even bigger. All right, so now add some pink in here. So now I'm going to go back and repeat the process. I'm going to start with, let's start with the orange this time. Orange color, and we're going to just glaze it over here. And it's okay if you go over what you already added, because we are going to work on, adding more layers and making them look softer like we did to the other ones, right? So don't worry if you cover what you already added. Okay, continue with the orange. Let's add that in here a little bit. Okay, and then the next color, this one, dark red-orange, and we're gonna go over and make it even more. Add a few more details, taking away the brush strokes, right? And finally with the red, crimson red, I'm going to go over these parts. And once you're done adding that, we are going to clean our brush and we're going to add the highlights. Again, let's start with this yellow, light yellow color first. And finally, we're going to work on these two big tulips here. And these are the colors I added. About a thumb amount of white here, maybe less. Crimson red, small amount. And then less white here, more crimson red and orange. And then half a thumb amount of white here, a little bit of viridian. Less white here, more viridian and medium yellow. And then viridian and crimson red straight out of the tube. And then if we need to add more colors, I will show you. And finally, I added white straight out of the tube, and then a little bit of white and orange. I want to make this tulip have a lot of color in there. All right, so I'm going to pick up my number 4 brush, and let's start with the red one here. So I'm going to start with the lightest pink color here we have mixed, right? And I'm going to first add the lighter highlights. Okay, next, this pink. Next color, and right underneath we're gonna continue with that color. Okay, now I'm going to clean my brush and use this color, the darkest red color, and fill it in. And you can go back to the lighter color here. Create a lighter highlight. Maybe there's some in here. But this is our first layer, so we're going to repeat the process and, make it look even prettier and more detailed. So these are going to be the most detailed tulips because they're up close to us. Let's use white. A little bit of pink. Mainly white. And go over. I don't want to add too much of the light color inside here. I want to make it a little more darker, so I want mainly the highlights to be on this side. So I'm going to clean my brush and use white straight and add the highlights here. And then here I'm going to clean my brush, use a little bit of a darker pink color and cover it a little bit. I don't want these to be too bright inside. This one's also, I'm going to make it a little bit faded. Okay, something like this. I'm gonna add a little bit of black straight out of the tube next to the red, right? And we'll use that to create even darker shadows. Use the red, add a few more darker red parts, and then we'll let it dry. Add a little bit more red here. I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to start with the brightest color here, this greenish viridian, right? And we're going to add our brightest area is going to be up here. So this is going to be our brightest area. Let's use a little bit of white and orange for this part right here. A little bit of orange and white. Let's just use now orange by itself, and we're going to start to color in certain areas. For example, right here, we want this to be a little more orangey, and then inside as well. In here, some on this side. Adding a little more color. Okay, clean my brush. Let's add the red, the darkest red. And we're going to add it right where we think will be the darkest spot on the darkest shadows. So right here, I'm going to add the dark red inside my tulip here. A little bit in here. Mix it in with orange. Okay, clean my brush and use a little more orange and red. Maybe a little more orange. I'm going to clean my brush and use white. Try to make it a little lighter. Okay, go back to the darkest red color and we're going to try to create another shadow. Inside here, we're going to have some red showing through. A little bit red in here. Use white and mix it in with the red. Okay, and then I'm going to clean my brush completely. I don't want too much of the darker colors. And I'm going to use a little bit of white and this pink. And I'm going to try to glaze it next to this red. Use a little bit more pink. Let's use a little bit of orange. Okay, clean my brush. And then I'm going to use this green, And when I clean my brush, I just quickly go like this in the water and just wipe it on the paper towel. Let's use this and bring it down as low as you want. I'll go this low. With this bright color. And then in here, I'm going to use this green. I'm going to mix it with this darker green. Give it some color here. Okay, and then clean my brush. Use a little bit of this pink, and let's add it right in here. And then let's add orange. Clean my brush real quick. Let's add a little bit of orange. Kind of glaze it over. And then let's add a little bit of the Viridian on the bottom right here. You see I'm adding a lot of color to my tulip because this tulip is going to be the most detailed and I want it to stand out with beautiful color. So a little bit of pink, and let's make a little wave here. Like this. Okay, something like that. Add a little bit of red. Red shadows in here. Like this. I'll continue with the red just a little bit in here. Let's use Viridian. And a little bit of red. Let's add this Viridian on the bottom right here. And then let's add the green. And then as we go up, it's going to go to the light color. Okay, let's use a little bit of Viridian and touch of black to darken this area. Okay, clean my brush again. Let's use the pink in here. And here I'm going to use a little bit of white and orange. Make this a little bit more glowy, so a little more brighter color in here. And then use this green again. Okay, and then we're going to use the Viridian. maybe a little bit of black. Somewhere like this. And in here. Okay, let's darken this one. A little bit of black and this brighter green. Let's use darker color to create a darker green inside here. Okay, clean my brush. I'm going to use this light color. Okay, so we got a kind of a rough sketch, an idea, and now we can really, let's add medium yellow straight out of the tube, and we can really start to make it pop a little more, right, with color. So I'm gonna use a little bit of white and yellow and kind of go over these and go like this. Create them. So and then maybe some parts are more yellow, for example right here. You know, from the glow of the sun. Okay, we'll continue adding these brighter highlights. And then more white. Make this one brighter. Using white by itself. Dab my brush in the water. Let's use a little bit of the red and orange. Make this a little darker in here to separate this. And then we can use a little bit of Viridian and black and add it in here, make this even darker inside. Kind of blend it out. And repeat the process. Add a little bit of this dark red inside here. clean this up a bit, so I'm going to use a little bit of orange and white. Make it a little cleaner, less curvy in here. Okay, and we'll continue adding a little bit of yellow. Let's make it a little more green by adding a little bit of black and yellow. And we're gonna add that darker green in here. Okay, that's good. Let's use pink. Transition from that green to the pink. And then orange, maybe a little darker orange. All right, let's go back to the light color. And we're just trying to make it smooth now. So this area, I want it to be pretty light, so I'm going to use more white. And let's add a little bit of blue, ultramarine blue, just because I want to add a highlight that is going to stand out a little bit in my tulip. So I'm going to clean my brush, and I'm going to use white and a little bit of ultramarine blue. And I'm going to glaze it right in here. Maybe do the same thing, add a little bit of blue in here. Let's clean our brush. Let's add a little bit of green. Add a little bit of blue and green. Make it more on the blue side. It's okay if you go over what you've already painted. Okay. Now I'm going to add a little bit of red. Try to add some parts a little bit more. Darker. And then let's add orange. A little bit of white and yellow randomly. Add a little bit more of the lighter colors right here. Dab my brush in water, use a little bit of orange and red. Make this a little bit orangey, but a little darker orange, so that's why I added a little bit of red. I want this area to be a little darker. All right, so I'm gonna let that dry, and before I start to add any more details here, I'm going to repeat the process here with the red. So we're going to start with this pink and add another layer, try to make it even more cleaner. Okay, go to the next color. This area is going to be pretty dark. And then the red. And then now we can use a little bit of black and red. We can really start to add even darker shadows inside certain areas. For example, right here. Some of these to stand out a little more. Right? And so once you're done there now, and then the next part will be just going around with your detail brush and detailing everything. For example, with white and this pink, more white. We're going to try to make it look a little cleaner by adding the brightest highlight, creating our shape with water and paint. And we're going to try to add some brighter highlights here. Okay, and then we can use a little bit of a darker pink once we're going inside. I don't want this to be too bright, so I'm going to use a little bit more of the darker pink. I want it to be just a little lighter, but not too much. And basically that's what I'll do. I'll spend some time making it clean, and I'll do the same thing on this one. I'm gonna add highlights starting with the lightest color, so a little bit of white and maybe a touch of yellow. And we're gonna go over these and make them even more brighter. And sharper. Dab my brush in water. Connect some of these. Use a little bit of darker pink or red, whatever color you think would look good here. I'm going to use a little bit of red and orange and try to separate some of these so it won't look all the same. use Viridian. And let's make this a little darker in here. Okay, and I'm going to use just white straight out of the tube and make this very bright here. And we're going to add a nice light glaze like this with the white. Create some separation with water. And just the white create a nice bright glow highlight. With white and water, go over these areas, make them super bright. And then we're adding more white and creating these super bright highlights. And then finally use Viridian and black. And on the bottom right here, I'm going to make it a little darker in here. And you can add as much of these beautiful details as you want to your painting. I'm going to add a little bit more black in here on the bottom. For example, I'll show you a little bit of pink, right? I'm going to add, well, actually ultramarine blue. Let's add a little bit of ultramarine blue with white randomly. And create a lighter color right in here. Right, a lighter color. Okay, so it looks like it's, you could see all the details, right? Let's add a little bit of pink inside here. Use a little bit of red. Go over these parts gently with water. Make them a little bit darker on this side. And we can go back to this greenish color, add another lighter highlight in here. Something like this, but you get the idea, right? So basically I'm going to go back and forth, try to fill it in, all my shadows where I want it to be, detail everything, right? And make sure the goal is to make it faded from a little bit of a darker color here going into the lighter parts here, but then the brightest parts are going to be, the highlights are going to be around, like right here. You see that? It makes a nice separation of our tulip right here. The light is hitting more right here, not inside. This tulip is kind of facing us, so I didn't add too much highlights here. So I'm adding a little more red. You could see a little darker on the bottom. And here it is. I'll be done for today. You could see I spent some time detailing and adding layers until I was happy with this tulip, and then I went back here, added a little bit of lighter highlights, and then went back and added a few more little details to make it stand out. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this tutorial. Alright guys, see you next time. Take care and God bless.